Ma'am, please join. We have started the session.
Should I share my screen?
Yeah, yeah. Yes, it is visible, ma'am.
I think we can start. Many of them has joined already.
Yeah, yeah, yes. Please start, ma'am.
Okay. So in the last session, we have described the need to have clear understanding about the behavior under gravity load as well as combination of gravity load and lateral load, particularly seismic load, and why we need computer-based modeling knowledge. And to as we have seen, to model any structure, we need to have very thorough understanding about their behavior. And then we also try to understand the code's philosophy of handling those parameters in direct or indirect manner to ensure the desired seismic performance. Now we are in the phase where we also want to model the structures. In computer-based model, as I said, what we do, it's the combination of analytical model, which the computer in the backdrop converts into mathematical modeling. It's nothing but the number of equations, simultaneous equation, it solves for us to get to know the different force components and displacement component in the assemblage. We have model using different from the library. Okay. So that is summarized in this whole slide. That structure is considered an assemblage of the number of elements, and then using those stiffness matrix or matrix method. I should not call stiffness matrix. The matrix for stiffness, C, M, everything is considered in matrix method. All the simultaneous equation can be also written in the matrix form, whose values are also known to us, and they for each element these matrices are formed. Then these matrices are combined for the entire structure using the compatibility, and the system, the software, solve those equations, simultaneous equation, to let us know about their final stress and strain condition under a specified loading, right? So I'm coming to the space frame model. Since we have sufficient computational power with us in general right now, so we can actually, earlier it was difficult to model space frame. We used to go for 2D frame analysis. But given the space, no space constraint and the computational facility are so strong that it only hardly takes 10 minutes, 15 minutes for one regular building to analyze. That's why I will discuss space frame today. So space frame is nothing but the 3D modeling with 6 degree of freedom button. Now what is degree of freedom? Degree of freedom is nothing but the independent coordinate that is required to describe the position of a node in the space. And for a fixed beam, I can see that we have 3 degree of freedom, 6 degree of freedom in each node. Like one is the axial in x direction, axial in y direction, axial in z direction, and the rotation in this 3 direction. So total 6 degree of freedom per node. Here 6 and here 6. Total 12 degree of freedom for a single fixed beam. And how do we find out the stiffness matrix? What is stiffness? Stiffness is nothing but the force required to cause unit displacement at any point while keeping all other at the same condition. We are not allowing to move this point when I am giving the force to cause unit displacement in this joint, but keeping all other in the original. There is no lateral displacement. And that's how we find out the stiffness matrix. It is 12 by 12 stiffness matrix, as the degree of freedom for this beam is 12 by 12. Okay, so such beam, this is the stiffness matrix, and the figure I have drawn, and that's how we get to know the final results or stress strain condition. That's how we do the space frame modeling, analytical modeling. Now, in this modeling, several things we have to take care, which is possible when we understand the behavior. The very first modeling is rigid floor modeling. The beams and columns are connected with the floor level, slab level, right? The slab is thickness is very small and the plan dimension is quite high. And when it is pushed together, being very rigid in its own direction, the beams and columns are monolithically attached with this slab. And then what happens? Beams and columns cannot independently vibrate or displaced. It displays as rigid body. The slab actually takes control. How much the beams and columns will be shifted, that the slab decides. If we don't understand this, what we will do, we will simply draw 2 vertical line, 1 horizontal line and fix them, and we will try to, we will think that we have modeled the actual structure and analyze. No. In that case, we will not get the actual behavior shown by the structure. And that's why I that in the absence of rigid floor modeling, there may be a classify the diaphragm. How the code classify this diaphragm action? It gives 2 types of diaphragm. One is flexible diaphragm, another is rigid. How it is differentiated between these two? If this lateral load is applied and the slab bends in this arbitrary manner, then we have to find out what is the deflection at this middle point, and we have to check what is the delta average. If delta middle is higher than the 1.2 times delta average, then it will be classified as flexible diaphragm. And if it is not, then it is rigid diaphragm. Rigid diaphragm, we can very it's easy to identify the rigid diaphragm. When we monolithically construct the beam columns with the slab, it acts as rigid diaphragm. Even when we prefabricated precast joists are used as a slab element, then also it can have the rigid diaphragm action, provided there are some guidelines given. And for the ease to find, I've also mentioned the clause of the code along with the page number. That can lead you to the actual clause of the code. So these are the two diaphragms. What will happen if it is rigid and flexible? How it will affect the behavior? Yes, it will affect the behavior like that. When this is the rigid floor, the force, lateral force, will be distributed as per the stiffness of the columns or the shear walls. But when it is flexible, it will only depend upon the tributary area of the load. Here we can see all these three columns have equal stiffness. So the lateral load for force F is distributed equally, F by 3, in 3 of the columns. But in case of weather, also these 3 columns have same stiffness, but because it is flexible diaphragm, the load, half load of this portion, half load is here and half load is here. So this column is going to get F by 2 and this is F by 4, F by 4. So the force distribution will be dependent on the type of diaphragm. How we can model this? And here with an example that was all with columns, but in in actual scenario, we have this type of plan. This type of plan where the periphery has a very reinforced concrete wall, which we call shear wall, and the middle ones are stiff columns. And in this problem, I have given that shear wall have the stiffness 10K, whereas the columns have stiffness K. And how this 100 P lateral force will be distributed. We can see for flexible diaphragm, it's P by 6 in the, although shear walls are very rigid, 10 times higher rigid, but it has force only 1/6. So our columns are going to be affected and there could be consequences. But in rigid floor diaphragm, we can see the load pattern actually follows in proportion to the stiffness of the elements. Okay, so that's the importance. Now we will talk about the modeling. Rigid floor modeling is there is a very famous master and slave command. Those who are working in industry, and STAD is very famous there. They can use master and slave command, which actually nothing but moves. Master is the slab degree of freedom. It controls the slave, like the beams and columns. The same degree of freedom will be moved together. Another, if we don't have this rigid floor modeling option here in SAP or HITAPS, that is there. Rigid floor modeling is there. We have to just select the nodes of the slab, then it will act as a rigid floor diaphragm. But if in our software or we are writing any software, there is no provision for this, how can we still simulate that? We can still simulate with the bracings, but actually these bracings are not present. So the mass density of this bracing we have to put 0. And we want a rigid, very rigid thing, right? That's why the modulus of elasticity is given almost 10 to the power 3 times higher than this adjacent beams. Why 10 to the power 3? Why not 10 to the power 9? Because then it will give some convergence error. Yeah. If there is drastic difference between the stiffnesses, then there will be convergence error. If it has been shown that, I have checked that if we give 10 to the power 3 times, that will converge at the same time, serve the purposes. So these bracings are hypothetical. In our own programming, we can simulate in this way also. But in the packages which are marketed, they already have incorporated some way to model this rigid floor. But we have to take care of this rigid floor modeling in order to simulate the actual behavior. Then it comes to the stiffness of the RC member. We are not bothered about stiffness of the steel member that much, but RC, we know that it is cracked section. RC has many cracks. So the actual gross moment of inertia is not their actual effective moment of inertia. And there are many. I have just, for example, I have shown the Eurocode and AC, how they are considering for non-pre-stressed beam. Eurocode is for all the beams and columns, it says only 50% of the total cross section area will be effective as effective area stiffness. But AC has classification. It says it's 0.3 and 0.7 times for columns where loads are higher. And for beam column joint, they have some ratio. But we are interested in IS code. In IS code 2016 version, they have given that in RC and masonry structure, 70%, that means 0.7 time I gross should be the effective moment of inertia, whereas only 35% of the B gross moment of inertia will be effective. And in case of steel, as I said, there is no cracking problem, so I gross will be I effective. And this clause we can find out in page 14, clause 6.4.3.1. So this is also another. If what happen if we don't reduce this stiffness, then we will see the under a specific load, the if stiffness is higher, P is equal to K delta. Right. If K is higher, actually it will be not. Delta will be much higher. Probably flexibility problem will be there. That's why we have to reduce the effective moment of inertia in order to get the actual displacement which we can expect for the actual structure. Another problem I will not discuss in detail, then we will run out of time, is torsion. When there is a very heavy load on one side, or the stiffness of one portion is very high in one side, that is not distributed. The center of stiffness and center of mass does not coincide, then there will be a difference. There will be lateral displacement as well as a rotation. That is torsional irregularity. And the code says torsional irregular building you may consider when the delta max, the maximum deflection at any point, is higher than the 150 times delta minimum. Then it is, we can consider this torsional irregularity. And if your structure is torsionally irregular, we can see this kind of rotation is possible. We have to take care of many things, but I'm just touching upon this issue, but not discussing in details. We can discuss in detail for another time. Now we are actually into the provisions of URM infill axial buildings in IS 1893. I have already shown that how the code is ensuring the minimum design base shear by capping on the time period, and the time period for masonry infill structure is 0.09 time of height of the building and divided by plan dimension. And I said for masonry reinforced structure, masonry infill structure, we have two since if it is a rectangle plan, if it is perfect square, then both the direction will have same time period. But if it is rectangle plan, then we will have two different time period in two different directions, and then we have to do the VV bar by VV correction. If my model is giving a very higher time period, lower base shear, then I have to make it higher. How much higher? Higher that base shear we can get using this empirical formula to ensure that I have designed it for the minimum design base shear prescribed by IS 1893. Right. Now modeling. How we are modeling the infill. In 2002 also version, there was no discussion about the modeling guidelines of infill frame, but in 2016 edition they talked about, then they say we have to model infills. But how we can model? As I I have shown where in the beginning that how infill acts. When there is lateral force, the deflection of the frame elements are different, and then the frame elements actually trying to push, and as a result, it is applying the infill is applying the tensile force to the, and it is actually acting as this diagonal stud. So we can actually, which can actually take only axial force. That's why it says we have to model it with pin jointed equivalent diagonal stud with thickness how much? Same as that of the original infill, right? So thickness is same, but original infill, it has given one caution that it should not be slender infill. If we remember the columns L by D ratio, if it is higher than 12, then the failure is different. We call it slender column. Similarly, H by T and L by T is less than 12, then only we can consider this the thickness of the infill model same as that of the thickness of the infill. And stiffness is 550 FM, where FM is the compressive strength of the prism. And from where we are going to get is IS 1905. Okay. So for multi-story structure, we can model it like this, concentric diagonal stud. And what will be the width? The width will be 0.175 alpha h to the power 0.4. And alpha h is equal to lambda 1 into h. And it has this lambda 1 is nothing but the corresponding ratio of the relative stiffness of the infill and the frame, surrounded frame material. We can see that ME infill material and EFE is frame material. T infill, I column. So it is nothing but the relative stiffness of the frame material and the infill material. So diagonal width we can use. To summarize, it can be found out in the page 25 and in clause 7.9. So infill can be modeled and the diagonal width, this diagonal width WDS can be found out like this, and ME can be found out like this. And now what will be the thickness? Thickness will be the same that of the original infill panel. And we have, it has to be pin jointed. Why pin jointed? In pin jointed, it cannot take moment. The stud action is only taking axial force, right? And in tension, it is in actual structure. There are openings. Even the first figure I have shown, it shows some openings for door and window. How we are going to model that? IS 1893 recommends do not consider any reduction factor for diagonal stud for URN infill with opening. You don't have to consider. But in research paper, they say we may consider using similar stud or other APM formulation. I'm not going into that. I'm just talking about who would direct us. And to summarize, example I have shown to see the influence of infill on the performance of RC frame buildings. Same panel I have shown here, and I want to know what will be the effective width or diagonal width of the stud member. And this is very one-page calculation, and in this one page we can find out the width. It's quite easy. And realistic model of infill, to find out the realistic model which will give sufficient accurate result, I have tried 3 different start model. One is this eccentric start model, one is double start model, one is 3 start model. and this behavior to simulate this behavior. And we have seen that this photograph is taken from one project, uh, that there is a gap between the below the beam and the top of the infill panel. What happens, how we construct the infill panels? First we construct the frame element, and then in between we try to first one mortar layer, then brick layer, then again mortar layer, then brick layer, and the top, what is the gap, we will try to fill up with the mortar. But what happens in mortar, there are much water, and with due course of time the water evaporates and there remains even small gaps, and that's why the vertical loads, whatever are coming on the beam, they are not transferred directly to the infill material, because for load transfer we need some medium. Through air it cannot be transferred, right? That's why it acts as non-structural element. And if you can see, this is the research paper I work. We can see that the single eccentric start actually can simulate all the observed failure modes in the experimental studies. So this is from my research. And to summarize, as I said, how the structure is behaving, what is the actual behavior, we can find out from posters, from literature, from research. To find out that, I have accumulated all the available sources and have seen there are 4 distinct failure modes of the infill panels. Those are the sliding shear, as I said, the flexural yielding to the column happens because of the mortar layer is very weak. When lateral force is applied, it slides and it hits the adjacent column. As I said, because it's applying lateral force, frame member are deflecting in other pattern. This is deflecting, and by this, frame members are trying to push the infill, and as a result, reaction, it is trying to give the opposite reaction in tension. So diagonal tension, diagonal compression, and corner crushing. If the infill material it is connected in corners, if there is very high crushing, very high lateral force, the corner may be crushed. So these are the 4 failure modes in which the infill can fail. And infill failure material in AC 41, even in 2013-2017 version, they have given how to calculate the strength, because in nonlinear analysis it is not only the strength, that maximum load we can calculate by calculating the maximum failure load in these 4 different modes and the minimum load form. But as per my studies and as per the design guidelines, we have seen the sliding shear failure remains the minimum one. So it governs the failure mostly. To understand the actual effect of infills on the performance of RC structure, RC frame buildings, I have again taken up the same, have applied nonlinear static analysis. Nonlinear static analysis is nothing but it's a dynamic analysis ranging its direction as well as amplitude with time, right? It is in pulses, earthquake load. But in pushover analysis, with dynamic nature of the earthquake, we don't consider. We increase the lateral load from 0 1 kilonewton, 2 kilonewton, 3 kilonewton until the structure collapses. And that's why this curves also called capacity curve of the structure. That means starting from zero until failure under the load. And thus we can compare the capacity curve for SMRF. SMRF structure is recommended for higher seismic zone. And we have seen that this is in positive x direction, this is in negative x direction. This curve is in positive y direction, this curve is in negative y direction. So that's a flowering thing. We can see for both x and y direction, the stiffness is nothing but the slope of this curve. The stiffness is much lower than the infill frame one. Infill frame is going straight, so very high stiffness, but very low ductility. So we have to be careful in earthquake resistant design while we are incorporating infills. It can lead failure. Very lower ductility. So we have to take care that, okay, we have some time. So I will slightly touch upon the irregularities. What are the effect of irregularities when they are kept in infill? Effect of irregular placement of infills on RC frame. The very first is open ground story. This type of buildings is known world over. And in India, since we cannot spread laterally, we are going vertically up. And to keep our car parking, shops, etc., we don't put any wall in the ground story, keep it open. And in the all the top floors, we can see that there are walls, and it is residential building. It's a very common thing. And the common observation too in the right hand side photographs, it is again from 2001 Bhuj earthquake, and these two were identical, exactly mirror image of buildings. But we can see this first floor has come down here. So what is the problem? So we will discuss about. So this is one. This is irregularity. In the ground floor, we don't have the infill, but in the top floor, we all have infills. So this is one type of irregularity. What's next? The mixed occupancy. This is from Dehradun. At that time, there used to be PCO, falling PCOs. And this is the PCO small shop. Only one portion of the ground floor has been kept open for this shop, and we can see this is the residential building. But in the right hand side figure, we can see this is the storage godown for cement. So only the peripheral wall, that too only in 3 directions. The first one is kept open for shuttering. Only the peripheral walls are there, but in the top floor, we can see it's completely residential building. So it's mixed occupancy. Sometimes in design, we don't consider this all. And all of a sudden, the user thinks we can convert it into this. And how detrimental it could be, I will show you. We can see for that cement godown, this is not that particular cement godown, but similar to that. We can see at the back there was a stair also. So at the back it was very steeper. So it has a torsional effect and it overturned. Similarly, in 2011 Sikkim earthquake, similar observation is there. There were only peripheral walls in 3 sides, and it has a huge torsion and it collapsed. So we actually cannot convert an existing structure without knowing its effect. So we have to always consult to the designer. Or even if I want to convert it, I have to take that into our design consideration. So clause 7.9.1 says that variation of story stiffness and story strength shall be examined along the height of the building considering in-plane stiffness and strength of the infill wall. They say you have to check and there should not be any irregularities. And in seismic zone 3, 4, and 5, there should not be any irregularities. But how I am going to remove that irregularities is not talked about in 2016 version. It is very difficult to ensure, and as you can see, it's 3, 4, 5 only seismic zone 2. Seismic zone 2 is very small, restricted to very small area of the India. So practically everywhere I cannot keep any irregularities in terms of strength and stiffness. But how we are going to ensure that irregularity is not there? In 2002, there was one clause for open ground story structure that if we are designing, it may not be the ground story. It may also happen to the first story. First floor is also kept open for car parking, for multi-story multiplexes and all. There is two-story parking also there. So they say the story you kept open, you design the beams and columns of that story 2.5 times the design base shear and moments. That will be caused due to if I would give the uniform infill to match the performance. And that efficacy of this code is examined by me, and there were papers, research paper published also. So I will show that result with the same plan. With the same plan, I have tried to find that out. And the story I have taken G+3. That means 4-story and 10-story. Seismic zone is quite high. Seismic zone 4, that means Delhi region or Ropar, they are in 4. Soil type was hard soil, grade of concrete M20, which is commonly used. Grade of steel Fe415, density of concrete is 25. And live load, I have taken directives given by the IS 800, part 2. For live load. And that is given there. The result. This curve is for uniformly infilled frame. And this curve is open ground story with the clause of 2.5 times, which I said conforming to IS 1893-2002 clause. This is conforming to the open ground story clause. This is uniformly infill frame building, and this curve is just I have removed the infill from the ground story. I have not, that is I called open ground non-conforming. We all do. So sometimes people used to do, they only remove, they don't consider, and we can see the performance. Stiffness, strength, ductility, everything has reduced so much. It is equivalent to the bare frame analysis. The ductility, of course, is very less. The worst performance is given by when we are keeping it open without considering anything, designing anything. When we are conforming to the requirement of open ground story as per code, we can see the stiffness is quite similar, matching to the uniformly infill frame buildings. In fact, the strength is slightly higher than the infill frame building, and the ductility is also matching with the infill frame buildings. So although in 2016 version, this clause is not kept, but if we do this trick, probably we can match the performance and we can remove those stiffness and strength irregularity from the structure. So that's why I have shown this one. This is with 4-story SMRF, and the similar thing we can see from the 10-story SMRF building too. That the worst performance is given by the open ground story non-conforming. The best performance is for open ground story with the clause included, and these are comparable with the uniformly infill frame building. And we can see this is very much prominent as we are moving for high rise. So this we can try into our design also. And when we are showing the collapse mechanism, how it is failing, the final global failure, how it is causing, we can see it is causing by the non-code for non-codal, even not yielded. All the infill panel, all the beams have not even yielded. But before that, the column of the ground story has yielded, and that clauses, and that reminds us that failure of the Takshila apartment. But when we are the similar failure, but when we are doing it with the clause of open ground story of IS 1893-2002 version, we can see that we can improve the failure mechanism, and that is why the performance has also improved, which is quite comparable with the uniformly infill frame buildings. And I'm going to conclude here today and welcome your questions.
Thank you, ma'am. Very nice insights you are given for this infill walls analysis. So I think I call upon for the participants that if there are some questions, you can type in the chat box.
Yeah, sure.
And then we will. Ma'am, just I want to ask one question that regarding that what material we are using that in infill walls. Is there any changes that or what we have to consider during the modeling?
When we are modeling the stress strain behavior, the material stress strain curve we have to provide. Like the brick element in India, we have variety of big strength starting from 2.5 MPa to 7-8 MPa. So whatever the material we are using, we have to know their strength, and that strength can be very well in our concrete laboratory. We can have those strength estimation.
So that for if the different material we are using for different panels, so everywhere we have to apply that property for that property. Wall.
That property.
There, yes. That will give you the real modeling of that building.
Real. I think this portion, Dr. Vijay Khose will tell. If we are somewhere using M20 grade, somewhere using M30 grade, we have to actually change
there are
the property of the material. Yes. If H by T exceeds 12, then how to proceed, ma'am? It was not explicitly mentioned, but for practical reason, it will not go beyond H by T, beyond 12. Height is in meter, right? And thickness is in millimeter. If it has to go 12, nonlinear plastic hinge in equivalent start for masonry should be placed in center or at both ends. Doesn't matter, it fails in axial. We are releasing the moment. Remember, that's why we are taking pin jointed stud. Or even if you can take a beam element but release the moment at the end, it will become stud. AC41 mentioned that beam column joint has an additional torsional member at joint. What's the calculation and how to model it in start as start in terms of SAT? Okay, AC41 I have not shown here, hide this slide, but AC41 also gives some very simple way to model the beam column joint depending upon the moment capacity of the if there is 4 like this, two beam and 1 column going through, so 4 arms intermediate, then you have to calculate the moment carrying capacity of all the beams coming out from that joint, and then moment capacity of all the columns. And if this ratio is between 0.8 or 1.2, then we can consider half of the column is as stiff, half is flexible. Let me check if I have.
You have to go back slides.
Sure. Is it
Yes, yes, it is.
visible?
Yeah,
Yes.
modeling of beam and column joint.
Yes, we can model like. So we can actually very easily consider the rigidity of the beam and column. Calculating this, as I said, it is between 0.8 to 1.3. If it is greater than 1.2, then the column is rigid, beam is flexible, and by this, actually modeling. There are many aspects. How much accuracy and what we want from the structure. Like the infill panels can be modeled by finite element. If we are interested in a very detailed crack propagation and the stress while crack is propagating to understand. But if I want to understand the effect of infill on the overall behavior of the structure, I need not go for finite element analysis. That may go anywhere else.
Yes.
But then macro modeling is good enough. One start modeling is good enough. So I need to know what I expect. Then I need to invest that much of effort in terms of money and time. So is your question answered? Mr. Gandhi?
Yeah.
Okay. Is there any method to model post-tension slab as equipment frame like manual in EDAPS? I'm not sure because I have not modeled post-tension slab.
Yeah.
So it readily answer is not available. I can check, of course.
Yes, yes.
I was expecting a lot of questions.
Yes, yes, I am also waiting for that because very nicely, small things are there in very easy manner. You have explained, ma'am. So it was very exciting to hear you for this both sessions.
It's my pleasure. If anyone is
Ma'am, again,
motivated through
just
this,
I want to one request is there. This same STDP on same topic again. We are planning conducting in month of November. So I also invite you for that STDP also. And then in the previous days we will put your session so that the participants will get advantage of that. So before going for actually modeling on the computational software, so this information is very useful.
yes, it will help them
Yes.
in the tomorrow's hands-on.
Yeah. So I think there are no more questions in the chat box. Yes. So thank you, ma'am. For
Thank you
this
so
session,
much.
now we will stop here. And now, in further case, if there are some queries, I will forward you by email
Yeah,
for
sure.
the respective participant. And thank you for being with us. All the participants, I also thanks. There was an important announcement that today's third session now we will again begin at after the 15-minute break only. So actually our regular time was 1 p.m. but because of the engagement of the next expert, we are starting that session at 12:15, and then we will continue. And fourth session will be as it is on his their own time, so that will be at 2:30. So we will stop for here for this session of STDP, and we will again begin at 12:15 with the next expert for the third session. Thank you,
you
ma'am,
so
once
much.
again, and very nice interaction to hear you. And we will again collaborate with you for the next future training programs. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, everyone.
So next session will again begin at 12:15 after a 15-minute break only, and then we will have a lunch break today. That was the change in the today's schedule because of busyness of the expert. So they are joining earlier, but the fourth session will be again on its own time, so that tomorrow the lunch break will be get shifted a little bit later. So I again end this session for this time, and then we will start with the next link for 1 p.m. session, and it will be start at 12:15 after 15-minute break. So thank you participants, and join there in the next session. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.